First off, I will be using this pattern 1797 from Simplicity for the bodice of this blue dress. And now I'm sorting out the pattern pieces to make sure I have all the pieces for the pattern, for the bodice of the dress. Taking a measuring tape, I'm going to measure my waist so I can start drafting the circle skirt that I want to attach to the bodice of this dress. My waist measurement being 33, I divide that by pi, and it's nice because calculators have a pi button, you don't even have to know the number. Then I divide that by 2, giving me the radius that I will use when I cut out a circle on my circle skirt. I will be using leftover wrapping paper from Christmas as a pattern paper for the circle skirt because it's big enough and it works. So here I am folding it in a triangle to make it into a square that then I will keep folding and it will turn into a circle if you keep folding it in triangles. And as if by magic, it's a circle skirt. Well, it's a fourth of a circle skirt pattern. Now I'm marking the radius of my waist measurement on the circle skirt pattern, so there will be a hole big enough for my waist at the top. Then I cut out what I just marked. This is all very exciting, but I would just like to say that most of the work going into sewing projects is cutting out. Here I am measuring it on my waist, seeing if it will look good. And now I bring out the fabric. And no, I am not cutting out the circle skirt right now. I'm just measuring how much fabric I will need for the circle skirt. Here I am trimming the circle skirt once I measured it on myself to see how long I wanted it, and I fold it in triangles once again. Here I am marking on my pattern what it is a pattern of and how many pieces you need to cut out of the pattern to make it a circle skirt, because that is what it is. Here I am preparing the fabric by ripping out some seams that were previously in it so I can get the full length of the fabric. Now we're finally getting to an exciting part where you start pinning and cutting out fabric pieces. The pinning takes a while, and then you get to cut out the fabric pieces, and it is really amazing because you've done a lot of work leading up to this. With projects, a lot of the time I like to cut out the pieces the day before I actually start sewing the pieces, so I'm starting on a fresh slate when I start sewing, and also all the annoyance of having cut out wrong pieces like this. It was not the right piece. I had not cut it in reverse, and so I had two pieces that wouldn't work for separate sides of the bodice. Now, here I am cutting out a bodice. It's either the bodice front or the bodice back. I think it is the bodice front. This video was particularly challenging to find camera angles that would illustrate what I was doing well. And I kind of like this camera angle, but I am hoping to improve my sewing video camera angles in the future. A lot of pinning and cutting goes into making a dress. Now here you can see that I'm rectifying the mistake that I made in the beginning. I am doing it in reverse, and also I am trying to match up the polka dots so each piece is an exact mirror of itself. We are now finally starting on pinning and cutting out the circle skirt, which was very frustrating in such small a space because I do not have a countertop on top of my cutting table that would make it easier for me. So first I pin it to the fabric, which takes a while. And then I begin cutting around the pattern so the fabric will be in the same shape as the pattern. Here I am with my scissors cutting the fabric. And circle skirts are big. I feel like they don't look big, and then suddenly you're making one and they take up a lot of fabric. They aren't a gathered skirt, so you don't think that they would be big, but yeah. Here it is, all cut out. And I am now cutting out the waist hole for my waist. The funnest part about sewing is being able to try the pieces on yourself as you go to see how the skirt and the dress and everything will look in the future when it's done. The best part of this Simplicity 1797 pattern is that it comes with a pocket piece that you can sew into the skirt. So here I am cutting out the pocket. Then I get to throw it into my pile of cutout pattern pieces, and I am so close to being done. Here I am, removing a zipper from a previous project that I'm going to use for my dress. Now I broke my seam ripper trying to depot a powder pan, and so now I am forced to use scissors to seam rip this zipper out. But it works, and I'm going to get a new seam ripper at some point. It's now the next day, and we are finally starting to use a sewing machine to get stuff sewn together, not just cut out. The spool ran out of thread, and so it is no longer of use to me. I was in one of those moods on this day. So then I looked in my thread box and found the closest blue thread that I could find. It was more turquoisey, but you know what? You use what you got. And that the empty spool of thread keeps annoying me. So it's out of the picture now. Here I am threading my machine, my sewing machine. I love the little flowers on it, and I love that it's black. But it is really old, so I'm probably gonna have to replace it soon. Here I am sorting out the pattern pieces that I had in a pile just to put them all together. Now I'm pinning them together. I like to pin them together, obviously, so they don't shift around, but also this is sewing a straight seam onto a curved seam, and so it is very finicky. So it's really helpful if it's pinned together nicely. And then once I've done pinning one side, I pin the other side. This is the bodice front, and so it has two side fronts. Here I am sewing those pieces together on my sewing machine. And I take out the pins that I have pinned as I sew along and put them in my nice little pin cushion. And then I backstitch. That's me pushing down that button there so the seam doesn't come undone. And voila, the front seams are sewn together. Now I am pinning the shoulder seams. Off camera, I ironed out the front side seams and the back side seams so they would lay flat. Once pinning the shoulder seams, I sew them together. This is the neck binding that I am now folding in half and ironing so it will fit around the neck nicely. Then I pin it to the neck, and also in my pinning adventures I found out I had not ironed the shoulder seams, and so I go ahead and do both shoulder seams and iron them. Neck binding is a nice way to finish off a neck hole, and also it is cut on a bias, and so it's supposed to not wrinkle, and it's supposed to go around a circle very, very nicely. Now I will sew where I just pinned around the neck hole. Once that is done, I am now folding the neck binding over, and so there are no raw edges showing, and pinning it. After I pin it, I will whip stitch that down by hand. Once I am done whip stitching it down, I am now sewing up the side seams that I had left unsewn, so it was easier to pin the neck binding on. So now I can try it on finally after these side seams are sewn. Here I am trying it on for the first time, seeing how it fits, seeing how it will look when it is turned into a dress, and just, it's really fun. Dress up in any sort of capacity is fun. Now off camera, I sewed the skirt together, I added the pockets, and sewed it onto the bodice. Now all that's left is the zipper. I also sewed on the sleeves. I have not hemmed the sleeves yet, but I will do that later. Here I am, I have sewed down the center of the dress, and then I'm going to iron that flat and pin the zipper onto that so the zipper lays flat once it is attached. When I pin the zipper to the dress, I have to make sure that the center of the zipper lines up with the center of the seam that I have in the back, or else there will not be an opening when I unpick that seam later on, once the zipper is sewn on. When I sew the zipper onto the dress, I change my sewing machine foot from a regular sewing foot to a zipper foot, and that makes it so I can get close enough to the teeth of the zipper and sew the zipper on nicely. With the zipper finally done, we are on to the hem of the skirt. Here I am doing some running stitches to gather it down just slightly so it'll fit smoothly when I fold it over and whip stitch it down. Here are the whip stitches, and it was a very, very long process doing it by hand, but that's also the best way to make it lay smoothly and flat, especially with a circle skirt. Here's a better shot of the whip stitches. It's putting the needle in, threading it out, and the threads going in a spiral motion, connecting the two pieces of cloth. The circumference of the hem of the circle skirt was about 5 yards, if I've done my math correctly, and it felt like it stretched on for miles. And here we are at the grand reveal. It is absolutely stunning, cute, perfect. I mean, it's just everything I wanted it to be. I really enjoyed doing this project, and that's all for now. Bye!